Scott Nichols, thanks very much for joining me today. How are you?
My pleasure. Yes, thank you very much. I'm doing well. Yourself?
Good, good. So let me start with easy questions. Walk me through memory lane, how you got to be a founder of a new venture.
hmm
You have a lot of experience in writing, reading. Talk to me about kind of the journey that you've taken.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey across my career. At one point, I got myself into the commercial construction industry and was hired as an estimator and project manager, and I did that for several years. Working on a lot of commercial construction projects and big projects and so forth. And then in 2016, I was introduced to resume writing from somebody, and I found out quite quickly that it was actually something I had a skill for. And I started doing contract writing for some reputable organizations, and they're like, "Wow, okay, this guy can actually write." So I saw an opportunity in that to build something of my own. And so I started my resume writing business and had actually focused on the San Francisco Bay Area market strategically because I knew it from growing up, and I saw the opportunity there with the amount of business and innovation that comes out of there. Um, so with my resume writing business, I knew that in such a crowded market that I needed to differentiate myself from all the other writers and really make a name for myself. And so I pursued several advanced resume writing certifications and kind of skipped the line on some of those things and quickly became one of only around 40 certified master resume writers and certified executive resume masters. And I also pursued resume writing competitions, which I bet you didn't know there were. But I ended up taking a first place in that, and it's been quite an experience. But the experience I gained from that not only honed my writing skills, my interview coaching skills, but gave me a breadth of information and depth and insight into the business world, and which includes the startup world as well as the corporate world. But so fast forward to last year, spring of last year, I had a resume client that had a unique story to tell, and she'd had a lot of experience in the startup space, and so I wrote her resume, and she loved it. And she said, "Scott, with what you can do with a resume, you should really be helping people, helping founders write their pitch decks." And I thought that was a very interesting idea. And so I started looking into it and realized quite quickly that a pitch deck is very much like a resume in a lot of ways. It's like a startup's resume. And so I fell in love with the idea, did a ton of research, and formulated Velocity, which we launched last year, and that brings us more to present day.
Amazing, amazing journey. It's funny because this is typically when I ask founders, a lot of times is it's not planned. It's not like, you sit back and you ask them, okay, how did you come to where you are? It seems like they just pick a fork in the road and they came across an opportunity and then they took it from there.
hmm
But most times, if you look back, you couldn't even plan it if you wanted to, just the way things fell.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think in terms of skill set? And it's really interesting because you've done quite a bit of work academically speaking as well. But no one, and I've done similar, journey. They don't necessarily teach you tangible skills in terms of how to get, for example, resume written, and
hmm
that skill set. What do you think that your particular skill set contributed to the fact you were so successful in resume writing? Is it that you were reading a lot of books growing up? Is it like what in particular? Because obviously you came out to the top of your game in that particular segment.
Yeah, I think it was a combination of things. I think part of it was, having an innate sense of composition, or maybe it was developed from, being a musician for almost as long as I can remember. I started playing the saxophone in fourth grade, and then, picked up various instruments and, started writing songs and so forth. And so there's that sense of composition that comes with it. There is the yeah, a love of words and playing with words, and reading certainly went into that. There was just challenging myself to always try to make something the best. And in some cases, I don't know, maybe that was, guided by a fear of failure, but wanting to produce something that is good, going to be, good reflection on my skills, but also is going to lead to a good outcome. But then also, you know, really kind of developing the understanding um, that you have to write for an audience, and you have to understand what that audience is looking for, and also the understanding that either, a resume or a pitch deck, it's a marketing tool. And so, every word has to have meaning. And so it's the culmination of all these things, and certainly the, pushing myself with the various certifications and all of that taught me a lot. And also working with other writers, coaching other writers, helped me develop clarity in what I was doing as well.
Yeah, and it's amazing that we can kind of find the dotted line between composition, composing, and playing to creating an outstanding document. In this particular case, a resume. Things have really changed as well in the kind of the resume arena. So if we dwell on it a little bit, then it's actually very topical to a lot of people these days.
Hmm.
People spend some time, and there's a lot of these AI engine tools that allow you to tailor resumes according to a particular job description. At the time, years ago, when people were actually reading resume, it was like, well, they spend about 30 seconds, something like that, or a minute, under a minute. And now it's not even. It seems like it's mostly automated. Do you still see the need to have this amazing, absolutely amazing resume? And how much is the resume actually get you through the door, or should we just invest in resume? Or I've seen a LinkedIn kind of meme where it was saying, okay, unemployed on one side title, and on the other side it was like, project manager, head of blah blah blah, all the certifications, you
Yeah.
know and it's really interesting. It's a meme, of course, but is a resume a similar nature, like where it glorifies the, and on the other side is really not that much there?
Yeah, I think, things have changed a little bit with the resume, and LinkedIn has had an influence on that. One of the challenges that I see, or the drawbacks from AI, is that it the type of content that it generates now, just given its level of sophistication, it's it's very boilerplate, and so there's nothing remarkable about it. And a lot of people forget that, a part of what you want to include in your resume is who you are, and that personal branding element. And AI doesn't know how to do that yet. And so, while it may be good at certain things, producing some generalized description of, say, work experience or something like that, it can't fully capture who the individual is. And that's something that really, I think, really can only come out, one, if you're either very self-aware and you're writing your resume yourself, or two, working with somebody who has this objective lens and kind of ask the right questions and pull out the right kind of information that's going to have appeal. And those things are certainly important to a resume, because once you get your resume through ATS, assuming that you do, which is an applicant tracking systems that scan the documents, which has produced just a nightmare of issues for job seekers. Um, you still need to have a document that is going to stand out, among others, because recruiters, hiring managers, they're still looking at resumes, like the physical resume. And so you want it to have, visual appeal. You want something to be striking about it. You want it to, to be different in whatever way that you can. So it's a challenge, because there's a lot you could do, creatively, visually with a resume, and I've seen a lot of those. But the issues, quite often, is that they're not ATS compatible, and so you have a difficult time getting through the system to actually have your resume looked at. And so, which is a huge reason why I say it's not just about having a great resume; it's about how you use it. And a big part of that is networking, and LinkedIn has, as much as it's, been a detriment to certain aspects of um, the job search journey. It's been, I think, invaluable for a lot of people to be able to network and, connect with alumni, or older coworkers, and, have something, your own profile, which your LinkedIn profile is really almost synonymous with your resume. In a lot of cases, it's first impression that recruiters may have, and it needs to be on point, and not a copy paste of your resume, but something different. And it's another opportunity to convey your personal brand and differentiate yourself in a very crowded and competitive job market, particularly as we're seeing in IT right now.
Yeah. And some would say that the easy apply button on LinkedIn really, um, killed it. Because again, a lot of people applying for the same position, maybe they're not that qualified, and then
Hmm.
the employers get inundated with like a massive amount of job applicants. It's very tough to figure out who's who. What
Yeah.
about customization? Meaning that again, with easy apply, of course, it's not applicable, but to create a custom resume for a custom job, or maybe the odds of you getting the job is not worth actually spending the time and effort into it. So if you're like one of 500 applicants, you have point 0.5% chance of getting the job.
Yeah.
So should we still continue customizing and making the absolute best resume for a particular job, or should just create like a great resume and then apply for many jobs as possible?
I think that the that's a great question. So the narrower your target is on your job search, um, the less customizing you're going to have to do, and the stronger you're going to be able to create a resume to have that value proposition and say that I'm the best person for this type of role, whether it's a project manager or CMO or whatever the case may be. So one of the challenges that I encounter with my clients quite frequently is that, like, well, they could do A, B, or C, and yeah, they may be qualified for all of those things, but a general resume is not going to stand out. And I think the amount of time, a lot of people are spending, I would say, wasting a lot of time customizing their resume. Meanwhile, other people are applying before they are, and they're missing out on opportunities. Whereas that time, I think, would be better spent developing that focus, like really understanding what it is that they want to come, that next role that they want to get into, shaping that messaging, that value proposition, so that they're building the biggest case for themselves, and also using that time to network as opposed to just playing online. Because statistically, and this has gone on for years, that it's applying online is the hardest way to get an interview, hands down. Yeah, I mean, there's no question about it. And so, but a lot of people, they're afraid of networking. They don't know what to say. They don't want to feel like they're asking favors from other people, whatever the case may be. And so they just get caught up in that cycle, and they're spending time customizing. They're spending time hitting the easy apply, and I think you're spot on with that. It's been detrimental because it's just opened the floodgates to people, and it's just created so much noise. It's hard to get recognized.
Yeah, and it's even topically very important because we've seen now Amazon just announced that they're bringing everybody to the office. So
Hmm.
these remote jobs are starting to vanish, and a lot of people are in limbo, or they've got a good job, remote job, and then they now have to consider either quitting out of necessity because they're not going to be moving back to where they are, but having to reapply and take and now we competing with whoever is going to be laid off from all these tech giants, and I'm sure Amazon is going to be
Yeah.
the worst one, and everybody's going to follow suit, like, just to go back to the office, which is really interesting because people were saying was the future of jobs is to do a remote job, and then
Mhm.
all the companies were saying, oh, how great it is, and then now the tune has really changed. And maybe we digress in, but what's your thoughts about the come back to the office? Is it just a way for them to get rid of people, or is it there's a real need of actually rubbing shoulders with your fellow coworkers?
Yeah, it's I'm sure the corporations like Amazon that are pushing for that, and I saw something for I think J.P. Morgan Chase is trying to do the same thing, return to office. I think they've got their motivations behind that, but I don't think it's I don't know. I see it so many of my clients want to work remotely, and my resume clients, and I can't blame them for that. They've got more flexibility over their schedule. They're not wasting time commuting and so forth. I'm sure there is something to having people working together in the same locale where maybe collaboration is easier, and there's that physical presence and connection and energy and synergy that I don't think that you can necessarily replicate working virtually. But I don't know why I would need to go back to full time. Or I think hybrid would be a good way to go. So it'll be interesting to see what the fallout is, and how employees take that, and whether they get fired, or whether they leave voluntarily, which I imagine, a lot of them will. And so maybe that will, push out top talent from these organizations that don't want to have to go back into the office full time, and then other organizations will see that as an opportunity to increase their hiring for better talent.
Yeah, and then it's the AI now that people are becoming more efficient and doing more with less. So the workforce is, at least in tech, is diminishing. You don't need so many product manager. You don't need so many copywriters. You don't need so many marketers. You don't need like there's just a lot of things that can be not necessarily displaced completely, but now instead of a team of 10, you can have a team of two
Mhm.
delivering similar results. But before we go into the next topic, I just wanted to dwell a little bit longer on the competition, the writing competition,
Mhm.
because I have no clue what that is. And it's really interesting. Do you mind just describing what that is? I'm actually super curious to find out, like, how do you even apply? Like, like, how do they grade it? Do you like, go on a podium with a medal or getting an hour? What's that like?
Yeah, it's been a very interesting learning experience, and because in terms of competition in the resume writing industry, there's virtually no barriers to becoming a resume writer. I mean, you could literally write your own resume, and technically you have been a resume writer, or written for your cousin or coworker or anything, and a lot of people do that, and so it's an easy industry to get into, but it's and you can find people all over the place that'll be willing to write a resume for $50 or what have you. But there have been for decades now, a few different professional associations that have stepped in to say, hey, let's have some standards. Let's also give some opportunity to educate others on best practices and so forth. So and I've been a member of two of those for quite a long time. One of them currently, Career Directors International. They have a suite of different certifications that and training courses and so forth that you can apply to. And so those professional associations have pushed to have those sorts of standards, through their own marketing and awareness and so forth. And um, so yeah. So anyhow, and that and resume writing competitions, which not that many people even know about it exists, but those things are there to help individuals with that drive stand out. But I think in terms of what you have to do, it's really a lot of brand development and brand awareness, and having those differentiators. And the one of the challenges has been that price point. And because like I said, you could pay $50 for a resume, you could pay up to $5,000 for a resume package. It's just all over the place. But what's the difference between all of that? And so it comes down to that messaging, it comes down to reputation, and ultimately it comes down to results, I think.
It reminds me of taking a photo taken. You can have your corporate photo done for $50, or you can go and spend $50,000.
Yeah.
And it's remarkable because there's everywhere in between. But just coming back to the competition, how does it work? Like, do you have to write? They give you time limits? Do they give you somebody's fictional background, and you have to write a customized resume? How does that work? Like the mechanics of it, and then how do you get measured and judged, and who are the judges?
Yeah. So, in terms of the competition, there are these different certifications, and to go through that, yeah, one of them at least is where you do get a hypothetical situation that you have to recreate a resume, and then that gets submitted to a committee who gives a pass or fail. And I actually sit on a committee I have for at least a year, maybe 2 years now. It's the certification committee for career directors international, and so it's a group of myself and my peers who have these advanced certifications, who have won awards, who have been in the industry for several years, and have that sort of judgment. And so, we will see something, we'll assess it based on certain criteria that we're given a list for and so forth, and give it the pass or fail, and then give them feedback so that they can, if they've done great, you still are going to have some feedback, or if they maybe didn't do so great, then steps that they can take to improve their writing and so forth. Um, but it's so loosely monitored to become certified. You have to like volunteer yourself, or want to be able to get certified to do that, and most people are not. Most resume writers are not certified.
Yeah,
And
because it's just a matter of like making the effort and showing commitment to the profession,
yeah,
and whatever that is.
yeah.
It's yeah. This whole topic is super interesting. So switching gears now. So you mentioned that you're now working with startups to specifically to revamp their decks
Hmm.
to for fundraising for potential customers, just in general. And let's talk about the similarities. There's a lot of similarities between resume writing because essentially you're writing a resume. I think you've described that to you're writing a resume to a company essentially.
Hmm.
So talk to me about the fundamentals of a good pitch deck, just for people that are not aware. And then what's how do you consult with these companies? Like what is your value added? How do you the process of working with a company to get to that magical deck?
Yeah, yeah. Great question. So, in terms of principles of a good pitch deck, it comes down to several factors, and similar to a resume, you're working in with a limited amount of real estate, right? So you've got X amount of slides to convey your story, and similar to how a recruiter looks at hundreds of resumes a day or a week or whatever, investors are looking at hundreds of pitch decks, a day or a week, and so you have to have something that is impactful visually, that will stand out, that is easily understood, and conveys that value in a very quick manner. And so I think those are like the fundamentals of it. And in terms of some of the mechanics, it's how many words do you have on a slide? What type of imagery are you using? How technical are you being in on certain things? And what is the flow and outline? And so that's where things get a little bit more detailed.
And
And
and I think those VCs, if we continue with the similarities, uh, the VCs, the venture capitalists, also spend, I would say, minimal amount of time
yeah,
on reviewing these decks, at least initially. They may be
yeah.
on their mobile, just running between meetings or going on vacation with their families, and they're like, all of a sudden they get an email with a pitch deck, and then they're reviewing like kind of like on the way or doing something else.
Hmm.
Uh, do you have any comments on that structure, and how do you particularly make sure that you capture? And again, they may decide that this is something that they want to pursue, viewing like a couple slides,
Yeah,
that makes a trigger that hook.
yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, the first few slides, I think is going to make it or break it. And starting with the cover slide, what does it look like? Is it striking? What sort of message? If you have just a logo, it doesn't really say a whole lot. So you need to have some tagline that is going to command interest, and so that somebody's going to want to flip through to the second slide, and so on and so forth. So part of how we work with our clients, or part of our process, is doing a strengths assessment. And we look at all of these pieces, and go through multiple conversations to get everything out on the table, and then look at how we can best shape that so it is going to grab attention. if it, what are a startup's strengths, whether it's their team. If they've got a rock star team, maybe that's slide number two. If they have traction, then that's something that we want to have come up front, because that's VCs with everything that's gone on in the market over the last couple of years. VCs and investors are a lot less likely to back just an idea and put money into an idea, and just to manage their own risk. And so they're really looking for startups, particularly VCs that have this traction, have this product market fit and so forth. So if you have that, a good way to help yourself stand out is figure out a way to get that into the first few slides of the pitch deck.
And I've seen some that have taken the iconic Airbnb pitch in the
Mm,
early days and then use that. And I think that's cause some fatigue on the VC side, where all of a sudden they start seeing that kind of pitch that look
yeah.
exactly like the Airbnb, or it looks exactly like one of the other, like a PayPal pitch, or some or there's a couple iconic ones that are available online to view, and
hmm
they're trying to replicate. What's your take about that? Taking a known formula that was successful at some point and just replicating that.
Yeah, it's interesting because and I would say the same thing for resumes, is that there's these individuals, recruiters or investors and VCs that are looking at a resume or a pitch deck. They they are expecting some level of predictability in what they're going to be seeing. Like a resume is typically written in reverse chronological order. You've got a branding title, you've got a summary statement, core competencies, work experience, and so forth. So to flip all that stuff around can throw somebody off, and they may find it interesting. Or I think, I would speculate that if they can't quickly find what they're looking for in a document, then they're just going to throw it away, because they've got a million other options to look at. And similarly for a pitch deck, having some predictability of, you're going to have your problem solution statement slides, like toward the front of the deck. It's just a part of the storytelling and what's to be expected. So I think some deviation, some creativity is okay in that, is as long as there's a flow to what you're doing. But I would caution, startups to be careful about just copying what somebody else is doing. And I would even say, something similar about the Sequoia method of the pitch deck, and what that looks like. Because 10 slides or 12 slides isn't always necessarily going to get the message across, and it doesn't always have to be in that specific order. So I think it's a good place to start. I think that, but push yourself beyond that to think about, how can you make something that's really going to stand out and capture attention.
And how do you, a lot of time it's, you have to translate some complex ideas or complex technology to bite size for maybe potentially VCs that are not familiar with the space or not familiar with the underlying technology. So how do you do that? That's again, it's a bit of magic and a bit of gut feel and a combination of all of the above. How do you translate these complex ideas into something that's really easy to digest?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know, like, how I personally do that. I think maybe that's a function of being a musician. And I started playing the drums a long time ago, and as part of a drummer, or even as a musician, you're having to listen to everything else that's going on and kind of take in this big picture while still focusing on what it is that you're doing. So maybe there's something to that thought process, where I could take in this information and then narrow it down. But how I think about it is that how I approach the deck is that this is something. The pitch deck should be something that you could hand to anybody on the street, and they could look through it, they could understand it, and they could think, okay, this is great. I want to put my money into this. I mean, that's the goal, because investors have relatively short attention spans, because they're busy doing a million things and looking at other pitch decks. And so you have to have that message very clear. But it can take multiple conversations with clients to really understand what it is they're doing at a technical aspect. And a lot of them are a lot of founders are pretty good at explaining it like I'm five, or explaining like I'm a fifth grader or whatever. Some of those higher level concepts. So it's getting a little bit deeper understanding, and then also having that more primary understanding of how things work, and then reshaping that. And I think that's one of the benefits that that founders can have from working with a pitch deck creator like myself, is having that objective lens, and having that outlet to communicate through and collaborate, and then ultimately translate that into something that is more simplified and understandable.
And are there any particular things you have to look at from as you mentioned the 360 view of what's going on? So I'll give an example right now. Sprinkling AI, artificial intelligence into the deck, or at
Hmm.
least in the kind of the underlying technology, whether it's AI first or AI second, or how do you make sure that that is, or, and I'll give an example, the reverse is also true. I
Hmm.
think if you put any type of Bitcoin on or blockchain on the resume, I was about to say on a deck
Hmm.
right now, you're gonna get rejected.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a fine balance, and it depends on the application of AI, for in this case, and whether that's the core of the business, or if that's like a value add to something else. So for example, I've got a client I'm working with right now that's in the medical device space, and the product is really focused on the device. AI comes into place with or comes into play with the software and the analytics side of that, which is really kind of secondary to everything else. And so in that case, it's positioned later on in the deck. Whereas I've had other clients that are really focused on like more of a pure AI solution, and so that is something that does need to be called out. But it's yeah, I think we're seeing some interesting shifts in the market with regard to AI, and how that's being taken, because there's been so many things that are just wrappers on Chat GPT, for example, and when in that kind of flooded things, because it was easy to do and novel. But now I think those things are getting shaken out a little bit more, and more closely evaluated. So depending on where AI fits into the product, or that startup is generating, it will have an effect on the storytelling and how we approach that.
And how do you so when speaking to a lot of VCs, what happened is they're not looking at a investment that would like make them 50% of their money or double their money.
Hmm.
Their intentions are how do we, we make investment in 10 companies, we know eight will fail, and we know that two would succeed, and those two are going to be the 50x, the
Hmm.
40x, because that has to pay for all the rest of the failures and then make sure that our funds is successful.
Right.
How do you then, if that is something you have in mind, how do you then kind of, because that's really all they care about. They don't care about the underlying technology. They don't care about some of them. I would say the majority of them don't even understand half the stuff that you are trying to
Yeah.
deliver. How do you then convey that magic X in your, because that's all if you can have one thing that will pop out of this thing, will say, oh my God, this is the unicorn. This is the 100X.
Hmm.
Is there any magic associated with it to do that?
Yeah. I think there's a few indicators, and because that's no, nobody can predict what's going to happen, and I think that's where VCs are making more of this shift to looking at traction and product market fit, and what those growth metrics are, because I think that's a huge part of it. But the other humongous part of it is the team. And it's one thing to have a product that people want. It's another thing to have a team in place, a leadership team in place that can actually manage a business. And that's something that I have limited control over, obviously. But it is when it comes down to that, and maybe this kind of ties into some of the resume writing thing, but looking at that team slide and saying, how can we let investors and VCs know that this team is the right team? And so part of it's the language that you use. Maybe you can hype it up a little bit without overselling it, because you don't want to do that. But getting enough into each individual team members' background and highlighting, what aspects of their experience are going to be of most relevance or to the startup, and what indicators are there of future success based on their past performance.
Yeah, that makes total sense. That was a great response because it's something that I can relate to. No one has a silver bullet, and I think once they don't, they rely on things they do know, which they know
Hmm.
the market, they know some of the trends, they know that a successful or past success in from a founder perspective is indicator potential indicators of future success. So in that regards, talk to me a bit about the process. Uh, is somebody sees this session and say, "Well, this is great. Like, I would really love Scott to help me out."
Hmm.
What's the process of onboarding? What information do you need to gather in kind of the process of actually working with you and getting that iterative process to make it great?
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for asking. So, well, we engage with clients in a couple of different ways, and one is more of a consulting type approach where we designate some hours to work one on one with them through conversations, and these are clients that maybe they feel they've got a good handle on their pitch deck. Maybe they've gone through it before, the fundraising experience before, but they want just some a different set of eyes to look at things. So in that case, it's really a conversation and understanding where they feel that they need the most help, and where we can add value in that. But where most of our clients hire us is for our turnkey pitch deck creation services. And this can be building a deck from scratch, or it can be a transformation. And we can handle both in the same manner. But in the process is quite the same. So what we've developed is a six-step process where it's onboarding, which is really just information sharing, whether it's an existing deck, business plan, financials, brand, style guide, logo, product imagery, things of that nature, just as a starting point. Um, and we begin to review those materials, write down questions, which leads us to our discovery phase, which is one or multiple conversations to go through this information, get clarity, and part of what we do is cross check the information that a client provides us with a rubric that I've developed in my research to say that this is everything that could be in a pitch deck, or everything that an investor would want to see, in different ways to approach that. That allows us to identify gaps, and uncover places where founders need to do a little bit more research, whether it's their competition or market size and so on and so forth. And in some cases, we help with that, and it's just a case by case basis. But that discovery process, one or multiple calls, gets everything else out there. We talk through different ideas and approaches and so forth. Once we do that, then internally we do a strengths assessment, as I mentioned earlier in our call, and looking at what is something that we want to showcase within the first few slides, and then that feeds directly into step four, which is strategic storytelling, as I like to call it, and really that's where we create an outline, and the content, the first draft of the content for the pitch deck, following our guidelines and principles. And once we have that ready to share, then we have another call with our clients to talk through that, see what they like, what areas we still need some more input on, and so forth. Once we get that maybe 90 to 95% of where it needs to be, then I get with my design team, and then we beautify the deck. But it's more than that. It's looking for ways to add value through design, to looking for ways visually where we can help convey perhaps a complex idea, or try to get some message across. So it's not just a pitch deck with words and content, but there is some visual appeal to that, and sometimes that's even looking at emotion. For example, if a client may be in the healthcare space, and touching on that human emotion factor of this is a pain that a lot of people are going through, and this is our solution for it, and having that juxtaposition in emotions throughout the deck. And so deck goes into design, and then it comes out of that, and then we've got substantially complete product, and then we get with our clients and go through the revisions to revise and finalize, whether it's on the design element or fine tuning the content and so forth, and those revisions, it's typically multiple. We don't really limit the revisions that we do at this point. We put a lot of effort into the first draft of all of this, and that inherently reduces the amount of revisions that we have to do. And same thing for resume writing. But ultimately, we want our clients to be very satisfied with the pitch deck, and we want there to be positive outcomes with it. And of course, there's a lot of factors that are outside of our control with that, but we're willing to work with our clients until they get to where they want to be.
Yeah, and it makes sense. And sometimes, throughout the maybe the raising process, things change. It might change. Maybe you'll uncover additional, news or things that come across.
Hmm.
The VCs are going to pay attention to whether it's a new technology or maybe another company that just launched. Like even the whole idea of FOMO, fear of missing out.
Hmm.
That happens a lot with VCs, meaning that they've seen somebody a similar fund invested in a company, and it goes, holy shit, like I need to do something like that too.
Hmm.
How do you then convey that? I'm assuming it's also a new, maybe a revision, or you go back and work with these founders to make sure that reflects into kind of the same deck. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. Depending on if they come back to us with some changes they want to make, we'll look at the scope of work involved, and if it's something like creating a new slide or doing something a more substantial change because they've had a change in their business model, let's say, or their technology, then something like that would warrant some fee or whatever that we would negotiate. But if it's something minor where we're making some changes that don't take that long, then we'll just do it for our clients.
So you created a great deck. You're ready to go. There's a lot at stake, and then now you have 30 minutes to present it in front of your audience. Um, I'm assuming that at that moment in time, you kind of let them sail on their own. Do you do any kind of dry runs? Do you help with like reviewing the deck and making sure that the team knows how to present and who present what, or maybe anticipate some questions on the deck, because that's has some real key issue, as well as how do you answer some of these questions that came about, and maybe
Yeah.
gauge some of the interest with the questions, or maybe they're not the right question, or maybe you want them to get into a aha moment, so
Hmm.
lead them through the storyline to. There's always a aha moment in the deck somewhere that
Yeah.
kind of the light bulb goes off. So do you help with that as well?
A lot of our clients have actually gone through fundraising experience before, and they feel quite confident in going out there and pitching. Just because they're experienced at it. Um, for those clients that need some more handholding or just wanted to develop their pitching skills, because some founders who are highly technical, they're not great salespeople. But when they're leading a company, they need to be. And so we actually have a couple of partnerships in place where we would refer coaches who have expertise working with VCs or who have gone through the fundraising process before.
Well, speaking of certifications, when are you creating the foundation of pitch writers?
I don't know. That's a good question. Well, maybe
You'll be the
something like
perfect
that
person
will.
for it.
Yeah, yeah, maybe. That might be something I look into. It's a pretty niche skill and offering to do. So, but I've got a lot on my plate right now. So maybe
It's
maybe a few years down the
it's the
road.
long tail. The long tail theory. You're always going to find the clients, and there's the certification and foundations for almost any, or association for almost anything.
That's
Uh,
true.
you'd be you'd be surprised. So I would say that you might as well start early. And you seem like the kind of guy who has the tool set to take on the endeavor. Maybe once this takes off and successful, maybe you can kind of take all that expertise, because you are paving the path, a lot of it on your own, because
Mm.
just because it's not a whole lot is there already. from a certification standpoint in that regards. But you are applying existing, the resume writing to that. And before we part ways, what's the easiest way for people to get hold of you, to know more? And then I would say maybe define who's your ideal customer.
Yeah, well, thanks for the opportunity. So, I'll start with our ideal customer. Typically, we work with pre-seed to Series A startups. Um, I think there's a lot of value that we can bring to them. I'd like to think that we work as a strategic extension of their team, and we want them to be as successful as possible. So, and founders or whoever can reach us at velocitypitchdecks.com. Of course, I'm on LinkedIn and pretty easy to find there for the pitch deck work and the resume writing work, which I still do a little bit of. But yeah, velocitypitchdecks.com website. We've got a portfolio there. My contact information is there, and so forth.
Fantastic, Scott. And what I'd like to do, with your permission, is perhaps open the stage for folks that wants us to, or you or me together, critique their deck. Maybe do a short videos on that, because that'd be very beneficial for people to get an idea of the thought process, and maybe not reveal all the cards, but yeah, provide some insight in terms of what that deck looks like. Maybe you can do a part B and maybe dissect some of those iconic decks, and then maybe some examples of current decks, and maybe in specific verticals. We haven't even touched upon that. Maybe there's some
Mhm.
differences between pitching for healthcare or cyber or IT or managed services and so on and so on. So, but
Yeah,
yeah, maybe we'll do that. So until then,
I would love that idea. Yeah.
yeah, thank you very much for joining me today. Much appreciated. Looking forward to doing more together. And until then, for all those who join, stay safe online as well as offline. And I'll see you in the next episode.
Well, thanks so much, David. I appreciate you having me on here.
Thank you very much.